Okay, good morning everybody. Welcome to this mediation session and thank you for participation. My name is Laura Varjakari and I'm your mediator today. Would you like to introduce yourself and how would you like to be addressed? Start here.
I'm Liza Brown and you can call me Liz.
Okay.
Good morning, my name is Chris Rizzo. I'm here representing Miss Brown from Wellman and Drew LLP. Please refer to me as just Chris.
Okay.
To you. Hello, I'm George Carter, and George will do, and I'm here on behalf of myself and my colleague Bill Cuomo.
Hello everybody, my name is Kelly Kennedy, please refer to me as Kelly. I'm here today on behalf of SysTech as their lawyer.
Thank you. Are you all still available for at least 2 hours?
Yes,
Absolutely. Great. And I have no affiliation with your office and I'm not acquainted with either of you guys to this meeting, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And mediation is a voluntary and informal process used to resolve conflict between the participating parties. And your attendance to this meeting does not imply any admission of guilt or wrongdoing. And mediation offers all participants an opportunity to improve their communications in order to better resolve this issue. And the mediation begins with each party receiving an uninterrupted amount of time to explain what part in this mediation. And this should include the facts as you see them and how you feel. And after each party has an opportunity to speak, we will formulate a list of interests and issues to create an agenda for this meeting today. And using the issues, you will derive options for resolution. And from the options, you will select the most appropriate one for the issues and then set forth a method of implementation. And this mediation session will ideally end up with a mutually acceptable written agreement that both of you have signed. And I may use a process called caucusing. A caucus is a one-on-one private meeting designed to help the mediator clarify some concerns or questions. And when calling for caucus, I will caucus with each of you. And please do not assign significance to the length of time I may spend caucusing with one party or the other. And information in the caucus that is confidential will neither be shared in other caucus nor when the parties reconvene in the joint session. I may ask your permission to share some of the information I believe it will help move on the process. However, I will share the information only if you allow me to. And following the caucuses, I will reconvene the joint session and the parties will determine if there is an area of agreement on any issue. And each party has the opportunity to speak with me individually, if necessary, at any time. And as my role as mediator, I will not be serving as an advocate, attorney, or judge. And my sole function is to act as a neutral person, and I can assist parties in arriving at their own solutions. I will not provide any legal advice. I will not take sides during the session, and I have no power to force a decision on you or decide how this matter should be settled. If you need any legal advice, you should turn to your lawyer. And I will be taking notes during this session to help me get a full picture of the issue at hand. And these notes will be destroyed after the process is completed. Is that clear?
Thank you. No, that's absolutely fine with me. I just thought I'd point out as well today that I'm here not only on behalf of Cuomo and Carter, but also to represent the interests of SysTech and their management committee as well. So I thank you very much for having us here today, and I really do look forward to getting this sorted out.
Okay, good.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Miss Mediator. Of course, obviously, we share the same opinion as you. This is mediation. There's supposed to be no hard feelings involved. Obviously, there'll be some disagreements, but we're really hoping to find some resolution at the end of the day. And from my client's perspective, and I'm sure your clients as well, this is a matter that does need to be taken seriously, and we do need to find some end goal. So absolutely, thank you very much.
Thank you. So let's start with Ms. Brown. Liza, would you tell us what brings you into mediation today?
So I've worked for SysTech for 7 years. I'm the manager of user training. Around 6 months ago, I found that I was being sexually harassed by Bill Cuomo. I often have to take work into the printing room because I'm under really big deadlines and there's a lot of pressure, so sometimes I like to take the materials in myself to make sure that things are done properly. In the printing room, there's a lot of very vulgar calendars with Sports Illustrated women, so it's just a lot of naked women, and I found that Bill Cuomo was saying things to me like, you know, that I could be on those calendars. I then found that he was brushing up against me in very inappropriate ways. So then I took this complaint to George Carter, who is the manager of printing services, and basically he didn't really do anything. He just said to me things like, well, if I'm not happy, why do I keep going back in there? And just undermined my role as a manager. I don't think the company reprimanded Bill Cuomo very well at all. I actually was going for a promotion and was recommended for it, and now I haven't received that promotion and I didn't get an explanation why. I've been very unhappy, I haven't been able to sleep. I've been seeing a therapist for around 7 months, which has cost me a great deal of money. I'm fighting with my husband. The atmosphere at work is very uncomfortable. None of the men will talk to me or even acknowledge me. But my problem is that I really love working for SysTech, and I've just moved house. There's no way I can move anywhere. So I would just like to come to some kind of resolution, but I am very unhappy at the moment.
Okay, thank you.
And George, would you tell us what brings you to the table today?
Well, around 7 months ago, Miss Brown came to me to complain about my colleague Bill, who is an excellent worker. He is a family man. I've never had any complaints about his work, his attitude, his behaviour. He's a very valuable member of our team, and she seems to have gotten some crazy impression that he's being a little over-friendly with her. I've known Bill for many years, and obviously I'm not going to take this complaint seriously because I think she's just stirring up some trouble for her own amusement. After the complaint, we've already taken steps within the company. He's had a reprimand in his file, and I've told her, and she has been told by the company not to go to the print room again, which I think is fair enough. If she doesn't find it a comfortable atmosphere, that's her problem. She is in a management position. She has many people to delegate to if she needs printing duties to be carried out. I just feel this has already been taken care of, and this mediation is just attention seeking, really. I don't feel the need to take this any further outside of the company.
Okay, so I have come up with a list of issues, one being the internal policy in the company when it comes to sexual harassment, and one being promotion, and one being money. So I was wondering whether we could move on into brainstorming session. So if you could just come up with some ideas to how to solve the issue at hand. Just throw whatever ideas you come up with, and let's see whether we'll find a solution.
Okay, well, I think on behalf of my client, the policy issue is something that does need addressing quite deeply. I think my client would agree that the situation was mismanaged, that things were overlooked, and her complaints weren't taken seriously.
I think sexual harassment was a very strong accusation. I don't think she has any grounds for claiming sexual harassment, really.
Well, I believe that I do, and I think it's attitudes like that of my managers when I'm supposed to be working in a supportive environment is exactly the problem. If I'm surrounded by managers that think and act like that and think that it's acceptable to have a lot of pictures of naked women around, I don't really think that that's fair, being one of the few women that work in this environment.
This is a free country. People are allowed to have whatever they like in their work area. It's none of your business. You're not even supposed to be in the print room, so...
I am supposed to be in the print room. It's my job, and
I'm
a manager. I'm under very, very strict deadlines. If I would rather get the job done, which I am paid to do, and get it done well, then I will go into that print room because that is my role. I am not being banned from a print room because of some sexual comments. I understand that having calendars and stuff is each their own, but remarks such as, "Where's my boyfriend keeping me warm at night?" is sexual harassment and makes me feel very uncomfortable.
Obviously, my client, this is something that is quite emotionally distressing, and I think it would be for women or men, regardless of the situation. It's something where she has felt violated, she has felt that people act inappropriately, and I think what might be best to carry on this discussion of policy is for both parties to accept that things weren't done by the book and that people acted out in a capacity that they shouldn't have been in, and I think it's important for us if we can just accept that and move on. Obviously, my client feels very distressed, and SysTech can just acknowledge that and see that actually sexual harassment did happen from her point of view, then I think that can be really constructive to our discussion.
Absolutely. I think on behalf of SysTech, this complaint has not been taken lightly at all. We have already tried to reprimand Cuomo, I believe, and Carter has had some serious talkings to as well. This situation is very serious, and we, like I say, we do acknowledge the seriousness of this situation, and would like to move forward to try and make Ms. Brown feel as comfortable in our work environment as we can.
Thank you very much. My client does appreciate that, so thank you.
In terms of getting things resolved, one of the potential solutions that we could have is implementing, in terms of the policy changes, perhaps an education policy regarding the sexual harassment and any violations there. So that may cover some of the images that we see in the workplace, whether that's just sort of addressed, get a real consensus from everybody to ensure that everybody really does feel comfortable. If a calendar or perhaps a picture or some artwork does need to be hung or whatever on the walls, that is up for discussion, and I think that should be addressed most definitely. And the education about sexual harassment, just to ensure that everybody knows how their actions can affect their workmates.
Okay, I think that's something that my client would agree with wholeheartedly, and we'd like to proceed with discussions down that route. Yes, and I'd also like a stronger grievance policy in place.
Okay.
And a stronger procedure to be followed.
And what would you have preferred to have been done in this situation? If you were in my position, what would you have done?
I think, can I just interrupt you there? Perhaps it's not worth talking about what should have been done. We're focusing on the future now and the future relationship, and we're probably not doing well to dwell on the past if that's something we can all agree on.
I think looking at that it's more about what would you like to be done in the future, what would make you happy for the grievance policy, what would be a good sort of reprimand or punishment, if you like, for sexual harassment. I think that's what we're trying to say.
Well, I don't think any legal procedure was followed in this case. I was simply told not to go into the print shop. So at the end of the day, I was the one that was really got punished. I couldn't go into the print shop to finish my work. So I don't really see that he got punished at all. A reprimand was placed in his file, and that was it.
So what would you like to be done? This is a question. What would make you happy?
Well, the correct legal procedures for sexual harassment to be followed. I don't know what they are. I'm not in a position to say what they are, but obviously the correct legal procedures here for when a member of staff feels that they're being sexually harassed were not followed.
I understand, yeah, absolutely. So if we were to go through some rigorous education process to ensure that it was, sort of everybody had to do it, there's no getting out of that, would that be a step in the right direction for you?
Yeah. That worked.
So, internal policy. Now we have discussed education policy and the stronger discipline methods and the images. I would like to further discuss these topics to make it a little bit more concrete. So first, the education policy. What would it be like? What kind of education workshop, or what are we looking for? Would it be a weekend, or once a new employee starts in the company, you'll get a workshop then, or frequently, like once a year workshop for the whole company, or what are we looking for here?
I think that on behalf of SysTech, that would be something that the management committee would be completely happy to discuss with the employees, and particularly Ms. Brown as well, as perhaps a pioneer of this education policy. That might be something that she may well be interested in, to ensure that herself and others are treated better in the workplace. In terms of the structure of it, perhaps a weekend, perhaps a yearly sort of scheme that is implemented might be a good idea.
How do you feel about this?
I think that as long as everyone that comes to SysTech and everyone that's currently employed by SysTech has to go through this training, then that would be acceptable for us.
So everyone's required to go through it once a year?
Yes.
And obviously, if necessary, if perhaps things change in the workplace or anything like that, just just to really ensure that everybody is up to date on how everybody will be feeling.
Okay, and how would that training be carried on? Would there be someone more from the company or outside lecturer, or?
I think it'd probably be most appropriate if it's somebody external as opposed to somebody internal. You could have the structuring of different practices is you would have people internally who are in charge of ensuring that the programme is carried out continuously, but for clarity's sake and to show there's no bias within the company, I would suggest that it would be best to have an external source coming in and regulating that.
And how would you feel about that?
Yes, I think if it makes the employees more comfortable, then sure, I'm up for that.
Okay, so it looks like we have come up with an agreement when it comes to internal policy. So once a year, there will be some external expert, and who will talk to the whole company, and everybody is required to attend this session. Okay, we're happy with this. And the next issue is the stronger discipline methods. So when something like this happens, what are the steps to be taken?
I think from my client's perspective, not enough weight was carried as to the actions of the individuals involved.
He was reprimanded though. It's in his permanent file. I mean, that will be with him for the rest of his life, which is working life.
Of course, but there should maybe, I think from my client's perspective, in cases like this, be a few more sanctions. If this is for the first few things that happen, perhaps the brushing up against my client or the comments that he made that were very derogatory and were very rude, there should be an initial warning, and then perhaps, because this is of such a serious nature, after the second warning, then hearing should be put in place for this individual in front of the management committee to truly assess what should be done, whether they should be fired, whether they should be kept on, or whether it's not quite that serious.
I just felt very unhappy that, for me, it seems like I was sexually harassed and I was the one that was punished because I was the one that was banned from certain places.
Yes, but there's no need for you to go there. All the other people in your position do not go to the print room.
They don't need to, because in fairness, I'm directly responsible for the printing of manuals. So at the end of the day, if anything goes wrong with the printing of manuals, it comes to me.
Okay, now we're just carried away a little bit here. So we need to discuss the methods or the sanctions once this kind of things happen.
Going back to what Chris said, I believe that that was sort of introducing maybe a two-strike policy. Yeah. Okay. I think with sexual harassment, it is one of these sort of things that is very assumption-based, and perhaps 2 strikes is not enough before real sort of punishment becomes in place. So if a 3-strike policy, then we can really see any patterns emerging. So once and then twice, the second time to really punish them might not be completely fair for everybody. But then perhaps the 3 strikes, that might you may be able to see a real pattern emerging there.
I understand, and with all due respect, Kelly, I would agree with the 3-strike process if it was something like being late for work, perhaps, or failing to complete work to a specified deadline. I think the issue that we have here is sexual harassment is so serious that, in this example, it's made my client feel very, very uncomfortable in her workplace. Obviously, this individual has done things which are considered criminal, and that really shows the severity of the actions. And I think it makes the rest of the workplace on edge as well. So perhaps, if a 2-strike process isn't enough, something that shows that this is more than just a simple misdemeanor at work. It is something very, very serious and something that can be taken to quite a high and significant level.
Absolutely. Can we just clarify perhaps what the grievance that Liz actually has here? So would you be sort of filing a sexual harassment grievance against both parties, Carter and Cuomo, or just
sexual harassment against Cuomo.
Okay.
But I was very unhappy with the way Carter dealt with it.
Yeah, no, that's
I wasn't taken seriously at all.
Understood, yeah, understood.
So just to go back to that formal point then on the basis of what should be done to reprimand those individuals, is there some kind of middle ground we can make? Obviously, there is something that needs to be put in place, and that's a harsh measure. It's not just a deterrent. These acts are fundamentally wrong, and it's causing great upset within the workplace.
But I think it's been dealt with. We put a reprimand and we put a deterrent. We've stopped her from, well, we've not banned her from going to the print room, but we've strongly recommended she does not go there for her own interest.
The issue there is, of course, my client is being seen as somebody who's done something wrong when actually she is the victim, and that's what we don't want in any circumstance.
I don't think she's solely the victim in this situation.
Well, I think I am.
I think you're refusing to take a little bit of responsibility for your
For
own
being
actions.
sexually harassed. See, this is exactly the problem. I work with management like this. This is ridiculous.
But you're the one who kept going back to the print room over and over again. You
Can I
obviously
just
enjoy
clarify
the attention.
that my
You were
role
very- you were treated
I am
almost
directly
like
responsible.
Okay,
Yeah.
now it's carrying too far. So let's go back to the warning and strike system.
Can I just clarify, because it will make me feel a lot better, I'm directly responsible for the production and the print of these manuals. So to be banned from the place where they are printed seems very stupid and undermines my job and my responsibility. I'm directly responsible. If the printing goes wrong, it goes back to me. Yes, I'm banned from going to the print room.
Okay.
We're not happy about this.
Ever since you've been promoted to the manager of user training, which is your current role, you've become very pushy, you've become very demanding. You think your work schedule is just much more important than everyone else's.
I mean, George, if I can just stop you there, I think that's an abstract issue. We're interested in dealing with the sexual harassment. I think we don't need to go into personal aspects of my client. I think what we need to do is focus on the point at hand, which is what will be done in the future with regards to Systec's policy when it comes to individuals who are being accused of sexually harassing another individual in the workplace.
I very much like an impartial hearing, because I don't think that the management we have at Systec take this seriously at all. And in fact, there's obviously a lot of allegiance and affiliation between the men that work at Systec. So as a woman, I feel very comfortable with that.
Okay.
And what would be your proposal on how many sort of incidents and how serious an incident would need an impartial hearing? Would a mere calendar be classed as sexual harassment and thus needed a hearing, as that was such a big issue in some of the facts that we've been given here, or is it more the touching and unwanted behaviour such as that?
But it was the touching and the unwanted behaviour.
So
Can I
is
just
that
point
where we
out,
draw the line?
The print room is a very confined area. There's a very small amount of space, so it could easily have been accidental. You could just have been reading far too much into this.
How many times is an accident?
So let's go back to this strike system. We need to come up with something concrete.
If Systec are willing, as they said they were, as we open this mediation session, to acknowledge the seriousness of this grievance, then I would suggest that a hearing should be implemented immediately when an individual vocalises concern of an incident of sexual harassment that involves some kind of touching, any touching that is conceived as sexual harassment by the victim, or any verbal abuse or any wording that would also again be considered sexually inappropriate by the victim.
Mm-hmm.
I think a hearing is a little bit too far. We don't have the resources to hold a hearing for every person who comes to us with a complaint, whether real or not, or made up, or we just don't have the resources in the company. You should know that. You work here. You know our company doesn't have the resources to do that. The manpower.
Could the hearing be conducted in a later point?
Yes, I'm happy for a hearing to be conducted at a later point, but after each and every complaint, I don't think it's a possible option.
Okay, what about the second stage? If the person that has been accused of carrying out some kind of sexual harassment, if they are given a warning, that they are then informed that should they react again in a similar way a second time, then hearing should follow that. Obviously, that takes into account the resources that you have, but it still doesn't detract from the seriousness of what this person may or may not have done.
Yes, I'm happy with that.
I'm happy with that.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. I think that we could definitely agree on that kind of policy. So,
Okay, how about if this happens a third time? Will there be
Well, I
additional...
think the hearing would dictate what would happen
Okay.
if everyone agrees with that. So the
Yeah.
hearing would dictate the
At the
appropriate.
second stage.
So let me just repeat what I've heard. So first there would be initial warning, and the second step would be impartial hearing
Yeah.
before the management committee.
Yeah.
Right. Are we all happy with this?
Yes.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Okay. Then we can move on to this images policy. how do we feel about those images and pictures on the wall?
Well, I find them inappropriate, but
I don't think it's any of your business, quite frankly.
Obviously,
I think that's maybe something that should be addressed in the educational policy, and that's something the men should consider themselves, that they possibly are making the women feel uncomfortable.
absolutely. I think that is definitely to be addressed in the education policy, and I think the weekend will be very useful to enlighten some of your colleagues on how these images make each other feel, and not just images of nude women, but also images of nude men. I'm sure that there are images sort of around the office such as that would make men feel bad as well. So it does work both ways, and I think the education policy is definitely to be discussed, and some kind of agreement would probably be formulated there.
Yeah, so if we can say probably it's quite a hard job to draw the line of what is acceptable to different individuals, so if we could just perhaps agree today that would be something that would be covered and looked into further with that policy.
Absolutely, yeah.
Is that something you'd be happy with?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're both happy with this? Okay, great. Then we can move on. We had this money issue. Yeah. So perhaps we could discuss this.
Now that's something that we've actually not heard anything about, so I'd open the floor to Liz here on this particular one, and perhaps I will just need to take my client out of the room after I hear the facts, just to sort of discuss confidentially some of that information.
Okay.
Well, on behalf of my client, obviously the reason that you haven't heard about this is because it is quite a personal issue. If somebody is suffering from any distress caused by something like sexual harassment, it's not something they broadcast to people, especially their employers, if they feel that their employees are in the wrong. So of course that explains why you haven't heard about it.
Okay.
Now my client did, and still is suffering emotional distress as a result of the actions of the Systec employees, and she had to pay a considerable sum in therapy to try and ease these feelings. And correct me if I'm wrong, but this sum amounted to 8,960 Hong Kong dollars.
Yes, and it's ongoing.
Ongoing as well, ongoing therapy, so potentially could amount to more. I'm under the assumption that my client's insurance does cover a small proportion of this. However, my client was forced to pay the first 4,000 Hong Kong dollars. Now, obviously, it goes without saying that if my client hadn't experienced what she did experience in the workplace, this therapy wouldn't have been needed. It's something that has aided my client greatly, and we hope it will continue to do so.
Yeah, absolutely.
When did you begin this therapy?
7 months ago, around the same time I began the sexual harassment.
And it's completely to do with sexual harassment.
Entirely to do with sexual
There's
harassment.
nothing else going on in your life
No.
that could
I'm happily
possibly
married.
prompt
Been
you.
happily married for 10 years. I loved my job. There's nothing else that's wrong apart from the fact that I was being sexually harassed in my workplace.
And you started the therapy because of the sexual harassment, or
Yes,
before the
only
sexual
because-
harassment?
Only because of the sexual harassment.
Only because.
So obviously there's a direct link to it.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, I understand that this must have really deeply affected you, and I do hope that the therapy is having some help with you on that one. Now, at this point, I would request to just take my client outside and just discuss on behalf of Systec.
Yes.
We would perhaps be happy to come to some kind of agreement with. Would that be okay with everybody?
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll say 15 minutes break.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we've come out of the room now just to have a private chat about the allegation that we need to pay her therapy. I think that's absolutely bizarre. I mean, there must be some other reason.
It's an outrage.
Absolutely awful. I don't think that we should pay that at all. I mean, what do you think?
I think she's attention seeking. I think this is her way of getting back at the company because she didn't get her promotion. I think this is completely retaliation.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I don't think that these claims are that serious. I mean, I know that the brushing up against, I mean, that's quite bad, but I mean, it's not too bad. And like you say, the press office I have, the printing office, I have been in there myself, it is quite a confined area. You struggle to get two people in
That's
there.
why managers don't go there. You know?
I know.
It's for the printing men to do their job.
And I think there's
She
even
has
a
no
sign.
right.
I think there's a sign outside that says that only the printing people are to be in there as well. So
She thinks her work is so much more important than everyone else's. She's very selfish character, really.
now we might be able to get a way around this Now, I've been told by head office that we can sort of do a number of things to try and drop this claim, obviously, because they don't want this looking bad on their reputation. Now, one of them would be the termination of your colleague, Cuomo. What's your thoughts on that?
I'm not happy with that. These print men, they're very high in demand. Cuomo's been with me for many years. He's reliable. He's of good character. I trust him very much. I cannot afford to let him go. He knows what he's doing. I can't afford to train another person up to his standard. No, he has to stay. I mean, if anything, we should be getting rid of Miss Brown. If she feels uncomfortable, she is free to leave.
I mean, you do understand why she feels uncomfortable.
I think she's attention seeking. I mean,
do you understand as a manager how you could have better dealt with the situation? Because that's one of her grievances as well, is that you didn't, as a manager, perform your duty. Do you understand that, and do you think that could perhaps be?
Yes, I understand it could have been more sensitive, but to be honest with you, we're just boys will be boys. This is.
That's really not the attitude to have, I'm afraid. I mean, sexual harassment nowadays is a really big issue. The calendars, they definitely need to be taken down.
She's so very sensitive. I mean, most other women in her position, they wouldn't constitute this as sexual harassment. It's a bit of harmless flirtation in the workplace. It happens when you work closely with people form relationships. They're very close. As far as I know, she was very kind to Bill, and they got on very well. So I mean, a little bit of flirtation. Really, it's all harmless.
I can see where that would. I can see where you're coming from completely. But from her perspective as well, we do need to put ourselves in her shoes, and this must have really deeply affected her. Whether or not the allegations are true, she is undertaking some therapy, and at quite some charge as well. Even if she didn't think she was going to get the money back, she's still paying this and believes that the therapy is ongoing as well. So now her insurance is covering it. It's only $4,000 to pay. I know that basically Systech just want to get rid of this claim as much as they can because, well, of the nature of it, and just between you and I, there have been some other allegations as well, but please don't bring that up in mediation. So I think maybe just go for it. Perhaps pay if you're not happy to get rid of your colleague Cuomo, and I mean, is a demotion for yourself anything that you could? We might be able to chuck something at them to get the price down or to get it reduced slightly. Would you be happy to step down as manager and maybe let someone more capable step up? Okay, so I think that we've come to an agreement perhaps to try and pay the $2,000 as a maximum price, and then try not to pay at all. First of all, is obviously the biggest thing. See what the therapy is really about. If it's really about this, then perhaps we will be willing to pay up to $2,000 maximum. I only think that it's about partial to blame for it. I'm sure that she's having probably some other problems or work-related stress.
Therapy should be a last resort. I mean,
yeah,
she didn't come to anyone else in our company.
No, absolutely.
It's a very half-hearted attempt.
Yeah. And as a very final straw, perhaps you taking some kind of reprimand for, perhaps not for the sexual harassment, but for not performing your duty as a manager properly, and just you acknowledging and understanding her feelings at this time and how that's made her feel that you didn't deal with the claim properly, and perhaps if you could show just how you really do understand what you could do next time. Hopefully there won't be a next time, but if there was a next time, what you will do to ensure that the claim is dealt with properly. Are we ready to go back into the room?
Yes,
Mediation. I think it's going quite well so far. I think the education policy, that's quite good. I think that's cheap to do for the company. I think that's just a weekend away. You don't really have to pay attention, but it just ticks a box, if you know what I mean. And what else have we got then? To talk about the images, but that'll be talked about in the education policy. And if it's all then you're not going to have to take them down, so don't worry about that. Anyway, I think let's go back in. Fabulous.
Well, welcome back.
Thank you. Yeah, I think we had a very productive discussion. and I contacted Systech as well just to discuss some of those things that we could maybe try and negotiate here. So just to confirm that it's 4,000 Hong Kong dollars that you'd be seeking in payment that the insurance didn't cover, that you had to cover yourself. Is that correct?
Yeah.
I can understand. And that's for the therapy that is purely because of the sexual harassment and no other reason. There's no other sort of stress-related reason, or you're not very stressed at work before you're... No? Okay.
But you yourself said that you have a lot of responsibility, you're in charge of doing a lot of stuff. Surely there's some stress involved. You've been up for another promotion. I mean, this can't solely be about sexual harassment.
No, I think my client has been quite clear this is solely related to sexual
Do
harassment.
we have any proof about that?
Well, it's
Therapy is
confidential,
personal.
of course, confidential information. My client wouldn't be bringing a false claim to the table with nothing to get out of that.
And also, I would not be going for promotion if I was already stressed. So that argument doesn't
My
really
client
hold
has shown
any
herself
weight.
to be a very able worker. She's taken on a strong position. And
Although I was actually recommended for promotion, which I obviously would not have gone for if I was under any form of stress and seeing a therapist before.
Absolutely. Now, one of the perhaps solutions that we could offer you today is to, we'd be willing, as Systech, to pay you 1,000 Hong Kong dollars, but also as the real issue here is the sexual harassment and the work environment as well, and to know that people are being reprimanded properly, would to need for Carter here to take reprimand in the form of a strike, not for the sexual harassment, but to formally apologise and acknowledge that he completely understands how this has made you feel, how he will better deal with the complaint next time, and how he obviously here failed his duty as a manager. Now, would that perhaps make the workplace slightly better for you?
Whilst we appreciate that, and I think it's very, very important that that offer is on the table, we would have nevertheless hoped that would come out of this mediation session anyway. As I reiterated at the very beginning, we need Systech to acknowledge the seriousness of this grievance and how deeply it has distressed my client. There are other options that we could seek, but we have chosen mediation as we believe it was the best thing. My client had formerly enjoyed working for Systech. 7 years is a long time, a long period of employment. There is nothing like this in her record to show that anything had happened like this before. So, as I'm sure you can understand, when something like this does happen unexpectedly, there are consequences, and emotional distress is one of them. I'd like to make it very, very clear that this is not something that my client takes lightly, and she's chosen to be here. She's voluntarily decided that this is the way to go, and it's important that a sustained working relationship is ongoing with Systech, and we believe that as a form of goodwill, it would be in Systech's best interest to pay my client back the 4,000 Hong Kong dollars that she has spent.
Right. Okay, so obviously we have some kind of negotiation that we need to do here. Systech aren't willing to pay the whole 4,000 at all. However, we are already paying for the implementation of an education policy and other things that will be in place now. So I hope that goes some way into ensuring that the work is better for you.
I do apologise. I think what needs to be not overlooked is that there was clearly a failing in the Systech system as regards to how sexual harassment claims were dealt with. And this policy would presumably have been put in anyway, because this may have happened to another individual. And it just so happens that Systech are in a way lucky enough to experience this grievance now and to ensure that hopefully this education policy doesn't happen again. And if I dare say, this is actually saving Systech money. You don't know what claims are going to be coming later on, and hopefully this education policy will be informative enough to ensure that there aren't any grievances like this. And it's a small price, a small burden to pay. Mediation is obviously a less costly option than litigation. I know it's not something that we want to bring to the table here, because it's not what mediation is about. But I think we have a fairly firm stance in the sense that 4,000 Hong Kong dollars is a very, very small amount to be paying when, as I'm sure you know from your experience, sexual harassment claims in litigation can amount to a lot more.
Absolutely, yeah. return to that one towards the end of the mediation.
Sure.
That's still something that I need to clarify a few more points on with SysTech, and it's not something that I'm willing, or perhaps we're willing really, to come to an agreement on at this moment. Perhaps there's a few more things that need to be discussed first of all, if that's okay, and definitely return to it.
Okay, is that fine with you?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll come back to that. So let's move on to this promotion issue.
I think, thinking seriously about this actually, I met with the board of directors of SysTech, and that was something that was brought up, perhaps whether you've not been promoted because the claim wasn't dealt with properly. So I think SysTech are seeking to look into this one, actively seeking to look into this, and to really sort of see what happened here. And it would be our solution to give to you to see that you do get some constructive feedback for why you didn't get the promotion. Not saying that you definitely get a promotion because you filed a grievance, you know, it's not, it doesn't work like that obviously, but to ensure that the reason that you didn't get a promotion was because you filed the grievance, to really ensure that you do get some feedback. And if it is the case that you didn't get the promotion because of the grievance, then obviously some reprimand will be in place there, because that's really not fair on your behalf, and we as SysTech do understand the seriousness of that.
I would like feedback because I didn't receive any constructive advice as to why I didn't get a promotion that I was actually recommended to go for.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so we have come up with an agreement with this one, so constructive feedback. Brilliant, and we're all happy with this. Okay, so now we have covered the education and internal policies, promotion, and then we're left with the money issue.
Money again. Okay, so the money issue is at hand here. Now, I think we left off on 1,000, around 1,000, 1,000.
No, 1,000 isn't a feasible amount for my client. You know, it goes without saying. 4,000 Hong Kong dollars is a lot to an individual. My client is married, she has a family life to maintain, she's just bought a new house recently, I believe, and you know, these things cost a lot of money. For a large company, 4,000 Hong Kong dollars, it can be some in some form of the budget, but you know, as I'm sure you'd agree, it's not the same for an individual. There is definitely scope for negotiation on this, but we would like to reiterate once again that we believe SysTech contributing this £4,000, 4,000 Hong Kong dollars really marks that they are very, very serious about what my client's been through.
Okay, well, I completely understand and take that all into consideration. Perhaps 2,000 would go some way to covering these damages. And I mean, the issue really is here about enhancing your work environment. Obviously, the therapy is a big issue. Like you say, you don't really have that kind of money just to be chatting about. But the issue in grievance here is really to enhance your work environment. So all of the things that we're going to implement after this mediation, I hope that then also sort of make up for that, for the lack of funds for therapy. Is that?
I think obviously that makes a lot of sense, but my client does feel like she needs to be reimbursed for what she's gone through as a result of SysTech. She would be willing to negotiate, but we would be looking still at a sum of 3,000 Hong Kong dollars. It's important to us that there is a large sum contributed to her loss. Again, show the seriousness of this issue.
Following up on what my lawyer said, yes, I think this mediation is about improving the work environment and improving management. I recognise that I may not have handled things quite as they should have been handled, so I'm happy to reimburse you 2.5, and I will take a formal reprimand, as it appears that I have not been reprimanded yet. So I will formally admit and give you a formal apology that I did not handle the case very well, and I can reimburse you 2,500.
Okay, that is something my client would be happy to accept, so thank you very much. Fabulous. I'm really glad that we've come to an agreement on that, and that you can now sort of go back to work and try and be happy in your work environment as well.
Yeah. Okay, great. It looks like we've come up with an agreement here. Brilliant. So let's just go through it one more time. So about the internal and educational policy. So everyone is required to attend this educational workshop every year, once a year. And in that workshop, we will address the pictures issue. And then the strike system, there will be initial warning. And after that, there will be second warning and the impartial hearing before the management committee. And then the promotion issue, there will be constructive feedback given to Liza. And then about the money issue, it's 500 Hong Kong dollars given to Liza. 2,500. Okay, that is great. So why don't we
And a formal apology.
and a formal apology. And a formal apology. Okay, so why don't we take a 15-minute break and then come back here and write the mediation agreement.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. That was great. Thank you very much.